Okay, I think we were holding on Chaf Amad Beis, that's 20b, 3 lines down, Boimine Rav Amir of Nachman. Is that correct? Naftali? Okay. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In this list of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash. Boimine Rav Amir of Nachman. Rav asked of Nachman. Nachman is second generation. Rav is the fourth generation. So, yeah, he asked Rav Nachman a question. Let's say a husband writes his wife a get, and he writes it on a golden plate. We said that you could write if it's engraved. That could be considered writing. It's not writing if you emboss it by pushing down on the sides. That was problematic. You weren't allowed to carve out the sides and leave the top there. But well, he gives her this golden plate, and it's written on it the get. And he says, I'm giving this to you all together as one. Here is your get, and here's your ksuba, because of course a gold plate has value. So he owes her a ksuba. Let's say a ksuba is worth $20,000, whatever it is, 200 zuz. So he gives it to her as in a piece of gold. So the get in the ksuba is one thing. So what's the din? Amarlei, so Rav Nachman says to Rava, niskabla gitav and niskabla ksubasa. That's good. She got it. She got her get. She got her ksuba. She got it all in one package. Eisvei. So Rava asks Rav Nachman a question. Niskabla gitach bashalik ksubasech. We have a brisa. Brisa says, here is your get. If a man tells his wife, receive your get, accept your get, and the margin of the get, it was a large paper. The get was written in the center. All around it is extra paper. So he says like this: here is your get, and the margin around the sides you can cut off, and you can use that towards the ksuba. You know, this is a classic divorce when they start calculating, you know, the little pieces, little scraps. You're going to get, just subtract it from what I owe you, the scraps, because of the extra thing.
Is gold?
No, now we're talking about regular parchment. But that's how they're going to work over here. You know how this is?
No, I don't.
Okay. Imagine. So, niskabla gita bashalik subasa. That's how it works. She actually receives her get, which is the center. And what's also surrounding it, that value, which is a few cents, it starts to subtract as the first installment from the ksuba payment. So Rava goes on to, so far there's no question, but Rava goes on to clarify why this is a question. He's going to deduce. Taima, what's the reason why this works? The ikashar, because the get was one thing, that was the center, and the margin was the ksuba payment, holekashar. But if you wanted to give it all as one, he didn't say that the get itself should be part of your ksuba. He didn't say that you're going to use the paper of the get itself. You can use for you know, the back of the paper. You could use for telephone numbers or something. Then it wouldn't work. So why does it work by the gold? It should have to be the margin, maybe, but not the actual get. Gemara says, "Who had the truth is, Rav Nachman would say, even if there's nothing extra. So why do we use a case of the margin? Over here we're saying the afagav de kashar, even though there is a margin there, the only way that margin is going to be part of her payment for the ksuba is if he specifies that it should be part of the payment. Why? My taima, avira de Megillah. This is just it's called the ear of the Megillah, which means it's just the margin of the scroll. It wouldn't have been considered a payment if he didn't specify that this is a payment, because we would have said it's just the margin of the Megillah, of the document. We would have said it's the margin of the document. So in other words, what Rav Nachman is saying here is that Rava was trying to be medayik from this case that only if the get is one thing and the margin is, and then the payment of the ksuba is something else, not if it's the same thing. And Rav Nachman replies, he says, no, over there we were saying that only if he specifies that this should be a payment. If he doesn't specify, then we would just consider it all as one big get. It's not necessary. We would have said that that's part of the margin. So it's a margin. It doesn't mean that you're making a payment now, because the paper was a little longer.
Part of the get considered payment?
Where for the gold plate, he said even the get itself is the payment. So why over there do we say that it's the margin? What he's trying to say is that if he didn't say that it's a payment, it wouldn't have been a payment. The get, of course, is not a payment. If he doesn't say it should be a payment, if it doesn't have an additional value, then the get. Well, no, in the gold it would be a payment because it does have an additional value. But the margin of the get wouldn't have been a payment unless he says it's a payment, and when he says it's payment, then it is. That's what we were. That was our chiddush.
So when you get a picture,
Rabbi,
yeah,
we said yesterday that the Beis Din keeps the get, right?
Yeah, but that's not the that's not from Talmudic times. That's more recent.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
but she would be able to use this gold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what the Beis Din would do. In a case like this, I would assume, let's say such a thing would happen, which they wouldn't allow it. But let's say it would happen, they would just keep a copy of it on file and probably melt it down. They don't want anyone ever. The reason why the Beis Din keeps the get on file is they don't want anyone to look at the get and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you spelt the name like that. I don't know if this is kosher. By the way, you should know that this woman is not really divorced." And they start a rumor like that. It's a shaila on the divorce. So they don't want anyone to ever do that. So they keep it on file.
so if you melt it down, they didn't keep copies in those days, did they?
Only
Not
Xerox.
back then. Only Xerox.
Yeah.
First, if it's gold and you melt it down, then you don't have the get.
You don't have the get, but she doesn't need the get anymore.
Yeah, but it's a shaila whether she's really divorced.
No.
It might be spelling the name wrong.
No, that's only if someone would look at it and create the shaila.
The
Once
reason
it's
they
not
melted
there.
it down is because there was a shaila and they didn't want anybody to see it. So the rumor got started. That's why they melted it down, right?
No, they melted it down because it had value. Okay.
What page are you on, by the way?
I'm on page 21, 20b. And one of the points that I left out of here that's in explaining this Gemara, the reason why the shaila came up is because it says he has to, it says that he has to give her. He has to give it to her. And the get should not be anything else. This should be exactly what he's doing, is just giving the get. There should not be any other payments involved in this. He should be accomplishing one thing, which is the giving of the get. And that's why this was a shaila. So it's going to come up a little bit more now. Okay, now he's getting really stingy. He says, "This is your get, but I'm keeping the paper. I'm not really giving you the paper. I'm just giving you the words on the paper." Eina Miguresa, she's not divorced. It's supposed to be given to her. It says V'nasan biyada has to be given into her hands, which means it has to be given. He's like he's still holding it. Al Menashe Tachs really asking. Let's say he says, "I'm giving it to you as a gift, but this is a matana al manas lahachsa. I'm giving it to you as a gift. I want it back. It's yours for now, 100%, but on condition that you give it back to me." So Harisa Miguresa, then she's divorced. We have rules about matana manas lahachsa that it is considered a real gift. Yeah, it's easy to understand this if you look at time as separate components. So if something could be 100% yours, even though it's temporary, because time itself is made up of full, each individual, it was 100% mine for this amount of time. Yeah, but it depends how you look at a lease, right? If you look at time as one continuum, so you say, well, it's not really mine because I have to give it back. But if you look at time as separate, that's like the philosophers like to talk about, like what exactly is time. Anyway,
This is the ball who's requesting it back in the future?
the husband wants the paper back.
Well, then he hasn't severed the relationship completely.
Severing the relationship is going to come up. You'll see that means something else. That means here she's 100% divorced because she received the get. Now she can destroy the get. That's fine. She's divorced even if the get gets destroyed. Turns out that she gives it back to the husband, but she was divorced from the moment she received it, and that was considered actually receiving it, even though later on she's going to give it back. It's considered 100% receiving the get.
I give you two reasons why time is not a continuum, but I guess is no, but actually in existence. First thing is we learn in time that everything exists only for Hashem, as long as Hashem wants it to exist. All right. So if that's the case, then there's no such thing that exists because it only exists as long as Hashem wants it to. And since we know things do exist, therefore even time should exist. That's my first answer. Second answer is another Taich for Bereshit Bara Elokim is in the beginning of time. All right, meaning before that there was no time because Hashem is beyond time. Therefore Hashem had to create time. Therefore it is a creation.
Right. Very good.
They're very ready.
Very good. Yeah. Well, time can't be measured without anything physical, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Although maybe, I mean, I don't know, without physical, I never, I don't know what would happen.
When you have a dream, like you might be sleeping for 10 minutes, you have like an hour-long dream. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
But that has to do with the way dreams work. Different than. Okay. Boy Rav Papa has a question. Bein shita l'shita, bein teva l'teva mai. Let's say the husband, you remember this guy, they're getting divorced over here. He says, the get is yours, but I want all the words, all the spaces in between the letters of the get, in between the lines and all of this, all of that is mine. So, Gemara says teku. We don't have an answer to that because the get was given. The letters on the parchment that was given. It's just in the middle. He's saying that he wants to keep that. Gemara says v'teipaklei the sefer echad amar Rachmana v'leishnayim v'shleisha sfarim. It says that because of la sefer krisis, he's supposed to give her a bill of divorce. It's not supposed to be different pieces pieced together or whatever. It's supposed to be one piece, one scroll that he's giving to her to get divorced. And here, if he's going to cut out every in between the line, then it's going to be considered every space in between the line. Each line is going to be considered a different scroll. And it's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be one scroll.
Is it common to ask after the taken?
It's very uncommon. It's thank you for pointing that out. It's very uncommon. Yeah, and actually, it's asking why do you have a teku? I could answer the teku. Yeah, it does. I've seen this in other places, but the majority of tekus do not conclude like this. So
Who is that?
this is Chaim.
Chaim. Good question.
So yeah, that's a question you ask after 5 years.
Yeah.
But okay, so The typically the Sefer Echad Amar Chav Leishnaim Leishleishis Farm. The Gemara says Leitzricha de Meura. I should have brought in a paper to show you how this looks. Yeah, let me just use this over here. What they would do is in a get, like they would say, I don't know, over here there would be a long nun, and over here there would be a lamin. What they would do is, see, this is the get with the, oops. See, I made a nun going down and the lamed going up. What they do is they make in the line, so that there's no space between the lines. They make the nuns go down long enough that the letters that go up, like lameds will be connecting. So you never have a space like that. And even if you do have spaces, but it would be like chutes and ladders, that the whole get will be connected. You know, it's going like it can never really say that there's a line without a connection. Without a connection. You see that? See what I did over there? There's no vowels in the get. Yeah.
The Chutes and Ladders developer was originally a get writer. Or you made that out.
I added that in. So okay, the Mura means that it's attached. It's attached. Boy Rami Bar Chama. Now Rami Bar Chama has a question. It's interesting because now we're going back a generation. Rav Papa is later than Rami Bar Chama. It says, let's say we knew that this slave belonged to the husband. And the husband wrote a get on his arm. We learned in the Mishnah that you can write a get on the slave and give the slave to the woman. But
What kind of ink did he use, or was it tattooed?
We're going to say later that it was tattooed, but right now we think that it's ink. Yeah. Yeah. Bill is pointing out that tattooing is connected to idol worship according to the Rambam. What's the prohibition? But right now we think it's an ink that was put on him. The get kasav al yada v'riyetz mitachas yada. And apparently we don't have Eidim Masira here. I don't know how the get works without Eidim Masira. I thought you need Eidim witnesses that watch the delivery. What the Gemara is saying over here is that we knew that the get belonged to the husband. We knew that the Eved belonged to the husband. And now we see now we see that the Eved's walking around with this woman. So obviously the husband had given the get, meaning the Eved, to his now ex-wife. Mahu, what's the din? Do we say that he actually gave her the Eved? Maybe the Eved just ran over on his own, and it was never a gift from the husband. This is a Baba Basra gift. Okay. No. Okay. So Amar Rava is going to answer this question. The ksav sheichel is dayafa. Why is this a good get anyway? This could be forged. Now, like Chaim was telling us, how was this written? It was written in ink on his arm. I would assume they wrote it on his stomach or on his back. You need a nice long piece of paper. So they wrote it on his arm. So I remember putting tefillin on this guy, very large guy. My tefillin didn't make it all the way around. Very big arms. It needed like a large area to write a get. 12 lines. So, but the problem is, typically the ksav sheyachal is dayafu. It could be forged. Why? How could it be forged? Because let's say the get had a condition in it. says this is only a get if you stand on your head, whatever. So the comes along the woman and she erases that part. She says she's divorced, even though she didn't do whatever ridiculous stipulation he asked for. How are you going to be able to tell that it was erased? You can erase off skin without seeing that something was erased. It's possible to be forged. The way we do it is that we put it on paper. If something would be erased, you could see that there was something erased. Even if it's tattooed, right? But okay, so that would be a good teretz. Hold on. So what's Rava saying? Rava is asking a question on Rami Bar Chama, but the Mishnah says that it's good. It says in the Mishnah, Aliyat Shalevet, that it could go, that you could give a get based on that was written on the hand of the slave. According to Rava would explain the Mishnah that the reason why in the Mishnah it wasn't able to be forged is because we had people that were watching the delivery of the get, and they were there. They see the get being delivered, so we know that it's a good get. Rami Bar Chama kasha, but according to Rami Bar Chama, that maybe is not following Rabbi Lazar, maybe there is no Edim Masira. Well, there clearly isn't Edim Masira, because his question was that maybe the Eved just walked over on his own. How do you know that there was actually a transfer from the husband to the wife? That's the only way the get works. It's a kasha. How maybe it was forged. Gemara says the Rami Bar Chama namele kasha b'ksevis kaka. It's talking about it was tattooed. If it's tattooed, there's always going to be a mark, even if they can remove it, which I don't know if they could back then. But there's always going to be it's always going to be. You can't forge that. Once you're saying that we're talking about a tattoo, they could have removed it back then as well. Same way they put it in, they can take it out.
No, it's actually more painful. When they were like in prison, like the government wouldn't let them out if they had tattoos, so they would get like cloth that have like holes and they'll put like salt in there and they'll like scrape it off. You keep scraping the layers of skin until you get to the ink.
Wow. So if that's the case, masnisinami like tikshe. You don't have a question on the Mishnah either, because you could say b'kseivaskak. You could say the Mishnah is talking about. You don't have to say that it's talking about that it's following Rabbi Lezer, that you have Edim Masir. You could say that everyone signed on the documents following Rabbi Meir's view. And what's the document is the skin of the slave. My Havi Allah. So what's the end to Rami Bar Chama's question? I don't see it. Why? What do you want to say? Jeff? Jeff is on.
If you want.
Jeff's on?
Yeah.
Not for-
Dr. Stein has something to share, but it's not for the family share. So if you get a private message from Dr. Stein, okay. So, my Havi Allah, what's the end of this? Tashima, come and listen. It's a very interesting rule. Is that normally when you see someone holding an item, that it's assumed that the item belongs to him, unless it's something that just because he's holding it doesn't mean that it's his. Otherwise, it's assumed that it's his. So it's like, I'm holding a pencil. Pencils are shared all the time. It doesn't mean that it's mine. It's passed around, something. But if I have a watch, then you can't come over to me and say that's my watch. Prove it. It's my watch, right? I'm wearing it. It's probably mine until you can prove that it's not mine. However, when it comes to sheep that just wander around, if you find like a cat, like in someone else's property, the guy can't say that it's my cat because it's in my property. He says, what are you talking about? It's I brought the cat from when I moved from whatever, it's my cat. He can say, but so what's it doing in my property? Obviously it's mine. It doesn't work like that because it roams around, it's everywhere. The fact that it's in your property doesn't prove anything. So Rish Lakish says, these sheep that roam around, it doesn't prove that it's in your property, that means that it's yours. So to the Eved, doesn't prove that it's
Hers.
doesn't prove that it's hers and that it was given to her. Just the fact that it happens to be walking around over here in her property.
Not walking with her, it's just on.
But yeah, or even with her, it doesn't prove anything because they wander around. Okay,
Who's this?
so there's a possibility that it's still the husband. The husband never actually transferred the Eved to the woman.
Chip. You know, like in the dogs, you put in the chip.
Chip.
you know, to find the dog.
They do electric chips. No, is that what they do? They used to have
It's
tags.
kind of no, they have a chip.
Uh-huh.
The tag actually has a phone number to call, to tell them it has a chip. And then they just go, and the chip, when they read it, any vet, any place, tells you all the information, who the owner's phone number. this and that. No, the chip looks like a micro pill. It's like that big, and they put it through a large needle syringe right under the skin, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
So you could get the same thing with your inoculation.
They wanted to do that.
What do you mean they want to?
What? They did do it?
Yeah, you're already wired. I got it's all on my computer.
No, I remember that they want to do that with
They use
military.
nano things now, so it's once you swallow, you don't even know.
You know, you watch it.
You'll find out the truth. But
Okay. Oy Rami Bar Chama. Another question from Rami Bar Chama. Hayu machzakim betavla shehi shalah. If there was some sort of tablet, not a modern tablet, but some sort of plate, we knew that it was her, it belonged to this woman. And the get kasavala, and it has a get written on it. And now it's in the husband's hands, and he's coming to divorce her with this tablet that we always knew belonged to her. Mahu. What's the din? Do we say that she was the one that gave it to him? I don't know why we're not asking. Or maybe maybe she doesn't know that she was supposed to give it to him. So therefore, when it's given to her, maybe it wasn't really a benasan, that he has to give her something that belonged to him, he has to give it to her. Maybe it was always hers. Well, Amar Abaya says Tashema. This is talking about, this is the Mishnah in Idias, that Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava testified that there was a small little village next to Yerushalayim, and there was an old man. And he would lend money to all the people from the village. And when he would lend money, he would write the document. And other people would sign on it. And the sages said that that was kosher. That was considered a good document, even though usually a document is supposed to be written by the borrower. The document's written by the borrower, that he's borrowing money. But here he was the lender and he was writing the document. Why is it a good document? It's supposed to be written by the one that's receiving, the purchaser, which over here was the borrower. What's the reason? Because in order for the document to be good, it needs to be coming from one of the parties and not the other one. So when the wrong one is writing it, he's giving it to him to make it that he should be able to collect. The lender is now giving the paper to the borrower so that this document should be acceptable. As he knows that it has to be his in order for it to be a real document. Well, it really has to do more with the field that's being sold. So, but he's giving it over. So Amarava, well, my kushya, what are you asking? How are you saying that you're proving from this that obviously the document's being given over, and therefore the woman, back to our case, the woman that had the tablet obviously gave it to the husband so that it should be a good get. Dilma Zakin Shani, the other maybe the older person, this older man that was lending money, he knew how to do a document, so he would give it to them, and so that the document should be theirs, and then it would be a good document. But by the woman, how do you know that she was willing to give this tablet over to the husband to use it as a get? Maybe she doesn't know the halachas of how it's supposed to work. Elama Rava says Mihacha. We have another source. says, if there is an Arev is a guarantor. If there's a guarantor, someone borrows money, right? Ruvain lends money to Shimon. Shimon has to pay Ruvain back. And there's a document that says Shimon owes Ruvain money. Comes along Levi and says that if Shimon doesn't pay back, I guarantee the loan. Now, usually that would take place beforehand, right? And you would put that into the original document. In this case, it was an original document, and after the signatures of the witnesses, the Arev Levi comes along and says, "And I guarantee the loan." So he wrote that. That was written after the signatures. Now the problem is that whenever there's a loan in a document, so there's a call, there's a rumor. Why? Because whenever there's witnesses, people are talking. And that rumor is very helpful because now if someone is going to buy any property from Shimon that owes money, people will know that you have to be careful with Shimon's property because Reuven may step in and take the property back that you just purchased because his debt came before your purchase. So there was like a mortgage on the property, a lien on the property that you bought. So that's only if there's a call that we can say that Reuven can now go take property away from Yisachar, Zvulun, and all the people that bought property from Shimon, because they should have known better because they knew there were witnesses to a document, and therefore there's a rumor. But if there was a guarantor on this that was signed after the witnesses, now if Levi, let's say, who was the guarantor, had sold property, no one would know that he was actually had a lien on his property because of the debt that Shimon had to Reuven. So the rule over here is that you can only collect from property that Levi actually owns, not property that Levi sold, because he signed afterwards. Now, what is Rav approving? No, Rav is proving like this. Just 1 second. Rav is proving that who owned the document at the time that it was written? The Malva, Reuven owned it. Who's supposed to own a document? Who's supposed to be writing the document? The borrower is supposed to be writing the document. So at the time that he signed, you shouldn't even be able to collect it all from him because it's not a good document. It must be that the lender, Reuven, is giving the document to the Arev on behalf of, so that it should be written and that should be acceptable. The Gemara says, Amar Ravashi, my kushya, how do you think you're answering the question by saying that because the person wants it to be a good document, he's going to give it to the other party to make it good? Maybe we're talking about a man is different than a woman. It's not so politically correct. We're saying that the man would know to do this. How do you know the woman that had that tablet is going to be giving it to the husband on behalf of, so that it should be a good get? Maybe she doesn't know that she's supposed to be giving up on it. Elam Ravashi Mehacha. We have another source. Isha Kaisevet Seskita. A woman could write her get and give it to the husband. And Ish Kaisevet Shaybre, not a get, I'm sorry. A woman. What did we say over here? No, she writes her get. Women can write her get. But and a man could write his own receipt that he received, that he has paid up the ksuba. If he paid her already, he could write his own receipt. Shane can't get al because the main thing here is just the signatures. Okay, so what we're saying now is that we now have a source that if it's written by the other party, by the wrong party, it's still going to be acceptable because the main thing here is the signatures. I want to see like how this plays out. Can you show me your?
I thought that Baba brought this example to prove that the old man.
Yeah, the old man was fine. He said it, that was good. Question is, does it work for a woman to have the get written, or is it okay for the get to be written on an item that belongs to the woman, and then the husband gives it to her? Do we say that it was that she automatically gave it to him so that it should be a good get? Does she know to do that? Does she know to forfeit this item temporarily so that it should come back to her as a valid get?
Why isn't
Over here it
just
says-
the same as matana.
Yeah, but does she know to do that? That's the question. It says like this. And the mere writing of the document or its receipt has no legal ramifications and may be done by anyone. In any case, it is clear from here that a woman understands the need to transfer the bill of divorce that will be given to her by her husband in the future. So we're saying that it is good. That's the, she understands to do that. And that we have a proof from this brisa that Rav is quoting.
That's sort of what happens today, isn't it? Because she has to pay for it. So usually when you pay for something, it's yours.
Right. When before they start writing a get, they have the writing instruments, which is the quill and the parchment and the ink, and there's some tools that they use to sharpen it belongs to the scribe. That's because he bought it. But before he starts writing, he takes it and he says, I'm giving these writing instruments he tells the husband, I'm giving this to you as a gift. Lift it up and acquire it, and then you're going to give it back to me, that I should use it to write here. You're going to instruct me with your own writing instruments that I should write the get. So it has to be written on the paper that belongs to the husband. We're not saying that the paper, even if it would belong to the woman or if it belonged to the scribe, it would have to be given to the husband. And here we're saying that our Gemara is saying that it must have been done, whether consciously or subconsciously, given to the husband so that it should be effective. Okay. Amar Rava, Kosav laget, v'nasna biyadavte. A husband writes a get.
There's no mention mashakana isha kana baila. It has
That-
to be like nifsemi or something.
It's a very interesting question. The Gemara later is going to say, how does a husband give his wife a get when it's 50 pages later? How does he give his wife a get? Whatever he gives to her, he acquires. She can never be divorced. So basically putting paper from one pocket to another. Yeah, so there's a statement from Rava that says, Gita v'yada ba'im ke'echad, that the document and her ability, her becoming an ex, happens simultaneously. So because she's divorced, she's able to acquire the get. But how does she?
Here we're talking about where she wrote the get, so it was hers.
Oh,
Why doesn't
how-
the Gemara qualify what kind of assets does she have?
how did it become hers in the first place? That's what you're saying. Yeah, so that would have to be that it's some sort of nichse malug or something that someone gave to her on condition that the husband doesn't have rights to it. You'd have to work out a situation where the husband doesn't own it. There's ways of
She
doing
has
it.
her own business, and he only gets
Right.
profits, but this was
Right, this was hers. This was hers. No, because there is a rule.
inventory.
There is a rule. Masha kana isha kana baila. Masha kansa isha kana baila. Whatever the woman acquires, the husband automatically owns it. But that's only that. There's ways around that. There are ways around it. Yeah. Okay. We learned it in Ksubis that there's ways for her to own items, yeah, her own clothing and different things. Well, here what's happening is he wrote her a get and he gives it to her slave. The Adavda, I'm sorry, he gives it to his slave, not to her slave. He gives it to his slave. Says, take this get. Because of Lashtar Matana Alav. And now he gives the slave to the wife. It's very interesting. So he puts the get in the slave's possession. He puts the get in the slave's possession. And he gives this get and the slave to his wife. It's a very nice gift. Could have given her an apartment. He could have put the get in his apartment and said, okay, you own the apartment. And then she would have acquired the get by that gift, because whatever's in the apartment would be hers. Here, whatever the slave is now hers because she gave the slave. He gave her the slave. Kanasu umiskareshes by. She acquires the slave, and she's also divorced with the get that the slave owned, because this is considered giving it to her. Gemara says, why? She's acquiring the get because the slave is holding the get, and the slave is hers. Now we're thinking that anything that goes into her property, she can acquire with her property. That's the rule. It's called the chotzer. A chotzer is kaina. What you'd have to do is you'd have to like close the gate on the, if something like goes into your property that you want, something flew in, a bird or something, or a wild animal that flew in, you could close the gate on it and say, okay, and now it becomes yours. It was hefker before, and now it became yours. So your property is able to acquire. So we're saying that the eved is your property, the slave is your property, it should be able to acquire. But we know that that's not true, because anything that walks around it doesn't acquire, it's not considered your courtyard to acquire. If you say that it's standing still, Aimed means standing, but over here means standing still. Anything that could walk doesn't acquire, even if it's not walking, because it could now walk. It's not. It only acquires for you if it's stationary. If it's really stationary, that it cannot move around, it has to be realty. The Gemara says, this would only work if the slave was tied up and he wasn't able to move. And if that's the case, then she could acquire the get by acquiring the eved, and automatically the get comes along because it's considered a courtyard.
So does the Gemara in general say that getting a get is a schus? Does the lady want it, or she doesn't want it?
We said actually it was a chayv. Get was a chayv.
So why would she accept the gift of the courtyard?
If she actually doesn't want to acquire it, then she could actually say, I'm acquiring everything, but not what's in there. But here we're saying that she does want to acquire it. The question is, did she do an acquisition? Let's say right after she acquired the eved, the get, which was never in her hands yet, gets burnt up. Is she divorced already because she had the eved? So we're saying that the eved was able to acquire for her because it's like her courtyard, but it walks around, it was tied up. We have a solution. But she would be divorced like that. Okay. Rava says, let's say he did the normal case. Well, it's not so normal, but he writes her a get and puts it in his own courtyard, and then he decides to give his courtyard as a gift. He writes a document that the courtyard is given as a gift to his wife. So she acquires the courtyard. Once she gets the courtyard, she's able to acquire what's in the courtyard because it's her courtyard can acquire on her behalf. Utricha. Now the Gemara says that we had two statements from Rava. One was the acquisition done by the courtyard. One was acquisition done by the slave. We need both of them. Rava needed to tell me both of these halachas, otherwise I wouldn't have known one from the other. If it would only told me about the slave, I would have thought only the slave. I could have thought that there's a little bit of a problem here. Let's say a husband puts the get not in his own courtyard, but Ruvain is divorcing Ruvena, puts the get in Shimon's courtyard. And then Shimon decides to give his courtyard to Ruvena, to the wife. So who did the get come from? It wasn't a gift from the husband. It was a gift from Shimon. And that's the husband has to divorce her. So by the courtyard, I could have thought that maybe I should have a decree over here that just using a courtyard to acquire a get could be problematic, because could be it would be in someone else's property, and she won't be divorced like that. It has to come from the husband. It has to be a transfer from husband to wife. Shimon could have been a shliach. That would have been a different story. Then he would have been on behalf of the husband. But this wasn't. This was just placed in Shimon's courtyard, and then Shimon happened to give the whole courtyard to Ruvena. It's not going to be divorced. It didn't come from Reuven. Okay, so if it would have said an eved, I would have thought it's only by an eved, not by a courtyard. And if it would have said by a courtyard, I could have thought maybe we should make a decree that maybe sometimes the eved's not going to be tied, and you can't use this just because one time he's tied. That's gonna work. Who knows? If it works when the eved's tied, maybe you'll do it when it's not tied. To make a decree that it should never work by a slave. Kamash Milan that it works by both. Yeah, I think there could be witnesses by all of these cases. Yeah. Amar Abaya. Abaya says, Michti. Let's see. Where do we learn that a courtyard works? How do you know that a courtyard works? Miyada. We learn it from her hand. How do you know that a courtyard can acquire? It's similar to her hand. Actually, it's machlekes, but if it's similar to the hand, then it should be similar to the hand. It shouldn't be different than this. Now, just like the hand, he's a husband traditionally can divorce his wife, whether she wants to be divorced or she doesn't want to be divorced. She can say, "Do you want to be divorced?" And she says no. Says, "Well, tough luck. Here's your get." Like being served papers. They put it into the hand and say, "Okay, that's it. You're divorced." So the courtyard should work exactly like the hand. The problem is, v'hamatana, the gift of the courtyard, when he's giving her the courtyard that has a get in it, midaita isabel karchalesa. So therefore, since the courtyard receiving, if you say, "Would you like that courtyard?" and she says no, it doesn't become hers. So since the transfer of the get is supposed to be learned from yada, that her hand, the transfer of the courtyard that contains the get is not perfectly similar to the transfer of a regular get, because she can say, "I refuse to accept the courtyard," and it's not. She won't be divorced. Maskefler of Simi Barashi. This is a maskef, is like it's a question on a question, which I would think is an answer, but it says no. It's a question on a biased question. Rav Simi Barashi asked, "You're saying that every time there's a transfer of a get, it has to be perfectly like giving it into her hand?" That's not true, because let's say she appoints a shliach to go receive the get from her husband. That would only work if she appointed it. If she didn't appoint it, then it won't work. But that's not how a get works. A get could be even if it's against her will. So the Gemara says, "Rabaya atu shlichas miyadis Rabbi." Why are you making that comparison? A shliach is not learned from yada, like the courtyard. A shliach is learned from mi v'shalach v'shalchas Rabbi. We have a different source for that. A shliach has a different source. The shliach needs to be appointed. The courtyard that's coming to her with the get, that has to work exactly like her hand would work, which should be against her will. Iba Yasema, the Gemara says, we do have another teretz why it should work. Because shlichus lekabala nami ashkan bal karcha, we do have a shlichus lekabala, a shliach that's accepting the get against her will. And how do we have this? It's bal karcha shekein av. Makabel get lebita ketana bal karcha. If a father had married off his young daughter and to someone, so she's fully married because he accepted the marriage money on her behalf, he can also accept the get on her behalf. Now, she may not even agree to this, but the father, who's going to be considered like a shliach lekabala, can accept the get against her will. So you see, a shliach lekabbalah does work against her will, and therefore you can't ask a question. How do you have a shliach lekabbalah ever? It's not against her will. It needs to be exactly like her hand. The answer is, but sometimes it is against her will, and that's how it works. Because sometimes it works against it's even against her will. Okay, I guess we should leave it here. Okay, have a good day, everyone.